Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we got?
First one comes to us this morning from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas, and Paul's interested in this. Last day to get the Insta360 Pro 2 at a bargain price of $4,500 US, but what would you do with it? And he's got a link there to B&H Photos sale for this.
Are you on? I don't see that question.
Wait a second. I might have something wrong pushed. Never mind. I apologize.
Yep.
I was on voting questions.
But we now give you a preview of what's coming up next.
This will come up later in the day. Yeah. Douglas Carmichael, who we are very happy to see first this morning. I've seen some impressive stabilized video taken while walking and driving using the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Has anyone had any experience with it?
Yeah, Jeffrey.
Oh, yeah, I got to play with the Osmo Pocket 3 a little bit at NAB, and since then the firmware has been updated immensely. I haven't gotten the Pocket 3 simply because the Pocket 2 also has some amazing stabilization. The biggest issue is that screen, and so I find that myself being a little bit closer with the smaller screen, and then the Pocket 3 bringing out a little bit. But yeah, it's just amazing what that little gimbal does.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I got one for myself for Christmas last year, and it's a fun little camera, really fun to play around with. I wouldn't, of course, compare it to much larger gimbal, like say the Movi or the larger DJI stuff, but for the size and for the price, it's really amazing what it can do with that little sensor.
Yeah, I found that I had the first one in Cambodia, and I was wandering around, and the idea that I was on the back of my motorcycle, as you sometimes do, and had my arm out with a little thing and capturing some footage on the way through as we're going through Siem Reap, and I realized I wouldn't do that with my phone. I was like, when will I use this? And I found that was the kind of place that I would use it, wandering around. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I just wanted to reinforce this. The shots that I got when we were out with John Preto's rocket launch on the back of a dirt bike, basically. It was, as I was in the back of a 4x4, we were out in the desert going through these things, and I was moving up and down so much, and the fact that my little Osmo, not the Pocket versions, but this was the slightly bigger one, the Osmo 4, I came back and I was just gobsmacked by how the engineering successfully worked. They really put so much engineering and so much sensible work into those gimbal stabilizers that I just think it's transformative, knowing that those kind of shots were virtually impossible without an expensive Steadicam. Now, don't get me wrong. Still, a full-blown Steadicam with an operator who knows what they're doing will outperform these things 10 out of 10 times. But for something that you can get a hold of as a civilian and just start getting really usable footage out of with a couple of button presses and those micro gimbals, I just think it's amazing.
Next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I need to preserve what little hearing I have left, and I like going to rock concerts. I have one coming up in a couple of weeks. Recommend some in-ear hearing protection that will not turn the audio into mushy garbage.
Good, Chris.
Yeah, there's actually like a lot of choices here. I'm a huge fan of just going and getting the, $5 for 10 pairs at whatever your local pharmacy or Walgreens, which are usually like, I think 20 dB pads. There's a bunch of option in this. You can go all the way up to getting custom made molds with interchangeable like padded cartridges that you can swap out for different levels of padding. But again, if you're already kind of losing hearing, the thing to remember about that is it's usually top end that's going away. So that's also the thing that usually is dampened mostly like from your experience at a rock show. So honestly, it might just kind of protect you with basic earplugs and not actually sacrifice that much if you've already got noticeable hearing loss. So yeah.
Go, Jeffrey.
Age is not your friend, TJ, and the biggest problem with anything that you stick inside your ear is it affects those little hairs that are inside your ear, which is part of what keeps your ears going. And so if you really want to protect it, I'd highly recommend something that doesn't stuff into the ear, and which would mean some sort of over-the-head type system. And I know you probably don't want to do that. There's a lot of a lot of them will do 20 decibels. I'm still a big fan of putting my AirPods Pro in there and then just putting it in whatever setting that works best for you. It worked great when I had my Bell's palsy and my hearing was just, I couldn't walk into a concert at all. But the bigger thing is don't stand in front of the speakers, get to the back of the room. And talking is another big problem when it comes to things like this, because you end up talking a little bit louder and everything gets a little bit louder from there. So try not to talk in the concert, just kind of move away so you can have a conversation, because then you're always taking the earplug out and putting it back in. And of course, the biggest thing with earplugs is they're always trying to get out of the ear, because they're not designed to, your body's not designed to have an earplug in there.
David Brady said that he said see an audiologist and have a custom set made. He said I have some with cartridges, and he also said my doctor says never stick anything smaller than your elbow in your ears, and I just think that would be very painful. I mean, just as, I'm just saying it'd be hard. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm the ones that I use are from a company called Ear Racers. They're earplugs that are specifically designed for listening to music or for musicians. They're I haven't heard of anyone else mention it aside from, I think, Alexander Knight mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. But they've been really good for me. Another brand.
What's the brand again?
Ear Racers. These guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
That guy. Ear Racers. Another brand that seems to be popular with folks is Atmotech. They have a bunch of high fidelity earplugs that tame the frequency down, the frequency range down evenly.
And go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the Atmotech research is what I was going to mention. Mickey just hit on it. They've been in this business for a long, long time. Also, I'm heartened that Apple has done so much now, and they're serious about their AirPod 2s and that little hearing test. I know it's a kind of a lightweight version of it, but I just went through it. Unfortunately, I've got too much hearing loss on my right side. My left side, it gave me a perfect analysis and a curve that it automatically downloaded into it, and in my left ear for when I'm needing to talk to people or be around a conference table or something like that. It really does help. So you can tell this is a huge problem as our baby boomer generation is aging. So a lot of people are putting a lot of research into this, and you do not have to live with diminished hearing unless you have something profound, and if so, it needs to be in the medical realm, but there are more tools than ever before. So protect that hearing, folks. It's the only set you've got for the rest of your life.
Good, Chris.
And just to add, if anyone's looking for actual like custom molds with cartridges and all that, Sensophonics in Chicago is like one of the top places to go and have that done. So just adding that.
That's great. Yeah, for me, I have. So this is what I keep in my car. So these are called wax pillows, and they you mold them, you kind of heat them up and put them in your ear, and that's just in case I get somewhere and I'd forgotten them. They're not very expensive, and I have them just there that I can grab. The ones that I used last night are these ones. So these are the Earpiece Music Hero. I went to see. We were talking about it before the show, Axe and the Hatchet Men, and they were running. My watch, of course, tells me what the dB was. They were running about 105 to 110 dB. So it was good to have a little protection in the. So I had these, and I thought they sound pretty good. There's some high end there. They're not incredible, but they're better than earplugs. Like I think that's what I was kind of striving for. I did order these after I think somebody asked about them. I don't know if it was TJ or someone else had asked, maybe Ryan Rademan had asked about these. And so I ordered them. We'll see how they go. These come as they're little capsules, and you put them in hot water, and then you mold them to your ear, and then you let them cool, and they'll dry at the shape of your ear. So I'm going to try them. We'll see. I'm going to do a lot more concerts because my kids are in concert mode. So I'm the lone cop. I guess the term is cotton top. So I'll be like in the second row, and I'm like, I'm the only person here over 25. So anyway, and then I'm going to look at Mickey. So this one is I'm kind of excited about, but do plan to get pretty serious about it, and I will say that I'm at least providing good guidance for my kids. I didn't do anything when I was their age, and so I'm making sure that they have protection every time they go to they just get into the habit of it. But I think part of that is getting really good ones for them. So I'm researching it, and then I'll get them whatever they need so they can go to concerts that they feel like they're having a good experience. Because that's when you take them out, is when you don't feel like it's going to be a great experience. And so hopefully that'll help. Next question.
Craig Kadokian, Toronto, is up next. Using a 98-inch screen hung from an orbit for volume-like shots. Anyone else see this experiment? And he's got a link to something there.
I go, Jesse.
Yeah, let's take a look at what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about what we're looking at. So this is Josh over at Make Art Now, has created what might be the most absurd rig in the history of mankind. So it's a giant Sony television on one end of an orbit and a camera on the other end. And it is functioning as a volume, so it's running through, I believe, Unreal Engine. And as the orbit rotates, the monitor compensates the movement, or the Unreal compensates for the movement.
I don't even think it's that complicated. I think he just has a camera. Yeah, it's not even, the Unreal's not doing anything. The camera's moving, and the monitor just is moving with it. So the camera, if you look at it, the camera just locked to the monitor, so they don't have to do any. Now he may be controlling it. The background was created by Unreal Engine, and I think to your point, the background has to keep moving. So you're right that the background's moving, but I don't think the camera, the motor's doing anything, right?
There'll be a fixed relationship between the camera and the screen because they're both on the same arc going around. But
go ahead, Jesse. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Jesse's like, that's exactly what I just said, and he's just like, oh my gosh, these guys. Anyway, so go ahead, Jesse.
No, so that's pretty much the 1,000-foot view of the thing. I'd point out what's absurd about this build, but there's nothing that could be added to the pictures that are being demonstrated. I don't think there are very many practical applications of this exact build, but that doesn't mean it's not interesting and kind of cool to see him work through how he designed it, and apparently maybe broke the TV at some point.
Can you Jesse? Did he talk about or did you see whether he's talking about how he's tracking for Unreal?
No. Just got this in. Didn't watch the middle parts because he gets into the nuts and bolts of it. I didn't get in that deep with him
because I think that there's two ways to do that. I think that he could be somehow getting information from the hardware to move Unreal, but I think the easier, well, maybe not easier, but the other way to do it would be to have the Unreal tell the motor what to do. Like tell the motor what to do, and then the advantage of doing it with the hardware or doing it optically somehow would be any shaking or whatever would be represented in the frame. The disadvantage is that it's harder. So it'd be, but he doesn't seem to be afraid of hard. Like that's no. like of things being hard to do. So anyway, it's a. By the way, these kind of extended arms we've used in a lot of things. We haven't done it with the monitor on one side, but we have done it with cameras where we put basically a pin above, let's say, a table or something else like that, and then you have an arm that swings out, and comes down and has a camera here. It's a really efficient way, instead of having tracks and closing up your space, if you have a place that you can suspend that arm from the center, and the weight and everything else, and then you spin it this way. You can spin it with a motor. We've even had ones where we just push them, and they just go around the person. And but you can put them on a stepper motor and then have them, go into different positions. And it's a really it's a great effect, and it's much easier and cleaner than using rails. Go ahead, Bill.
I watched the video before the show, and what he mentioned over and over again, and what makes me nervous even watching the whole thing, is that Orbit's joint in the center, the spinner, it is nowhere close to rated for the load he's got on there. That TV, he said, was about 150 pounds, so he's got to have a counterbalance on the other side that's close to that. So you've got a little fixture up there spinning 300 pounds of stuff over, theoretically, a person down there. So it's great for a YouTube video and for drawing
but you
eyeballs.
Probably want to sit under it forever.
Do not do this at home, please.
All right, next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles is up next. He says, anyone on the panel use the Sound Devices MixPre 6.2 MX-LMount battery adapter?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I used this mount. I should have pulled up a photo, but um, I use this mount for the MixPre 10 as a backup power source to the Hiroshi input that's built into the MixPre 10. It allows you to put in two NPF style batteries, Sony style batteries, to power your MixPre, and it's wired up in parallel. So even if you can hot swap the batteries at any point in time. For something like the MixPre, though, I would instead of using NPF batteries, I would recommend going with a plate, a Hiroshi plate that goes on that same mount at the back. This would allow you to plug in an external power source as opposed to having to dig up that NPF battery each time you have to swap batteries. Because say if I know Robert usually works in the or is looking to use it in a field recording setup, shooting documentaries. And if you're in the field, you have your recorder in your sound bag. You don't want to have to tear apart the sound bag just to swap batteries. So I'd recommend getting a plate with a Hiroshi connector at the back. Sound Devices sells one, which is actually a rebranded one that's manufactured by Hawkwoods. So I'd go with the Sound Devices one or the Hawkwoods one. And then I'd look into batteries from companies like Inspired Energy. They have a series called the eSmart batteries. They're also sold by Remote Audio. They're just rebranded ones by Inspired Energy. All of these are manufactured by Inspired Energy. You can also get them from other companies, such as Deity has them, and also there are a bunch of location sound companies that sell them rebranded. And then also consider perhaps a battery distribution system. I am a big fan of the ones from Remote Audio. There are others from, say, Professional Sound Corp or Cable Techniques. This would allow you to not only power your mixer recorder from the smart battery, but also power your wireless microphone receivers, your camera hop transmitters, your IFB transmitters, anything else that is in your sound bag can be powered from a single battery through this battery distribution system, so that you only have one battery to think about. It's easy to do swaps. You're carrying much less weight if you're compared to having, say, AA batteries or whatever battery you have to power your individual wireless receivers.
Yeah, and next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas, up next. Discuss new DaVinci Resolve 19.1.1 software update, which adds the ability to paste clips in the timeline at either the playhead or the in and out points, and it does a lot more. And he's got a link there to Blackmagic's website.
I got it, Bill.
So this type of thing, I don't know exactly how DaVinci Resolve works in this, but this has been a thing. I know we've been doing that on the Final Cut side for a long time, and it had to do with them recoding the way that timelines work. Famously, Apple went through 2 revisions of Magnetic Timeline 1 and Timeline 2. If that is what is happening, that they have been looking around at some of these other technologies and built it in, I will say it is transformative for video editors to be able to have clips do something more than just be positional ideas on a timeline, to have them be an actual thing. And if this works similar to what I've been doing for a long time, it really frees you up as an editor to think about doing things like putting down a gap clip and cutting it on either beats or off beats or something like that, and then replacing them as a method for construction in video that is not tied to laying down a clip and trimming it. But all these abilities, I'm fingers crossed for all the DaVinci Resolve editors that they're getting something similar to that, because it's great if you are.
You see how nice Bill did that? Like, yeah, we've been doing this for a long time in Final Cut. Welcome to our world. You know, like good. It's good that you finally got here.
To be a good
finally,
digital citizen.
He's so nice. He's like good for finally getting to the party. Yeah. So anyway, next question.
It's only been 11 years. Come on. Anyway, Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. I'm trying to push the envelope for how, but seem to be alone. Seems to be alone. Any suggestions?
Yeah. So in House of Worship is
House of Worship.
Assuming,
gosh, I should
yeah.
have known that. Yeah,
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, my recommendation of that is if you seem to be the only one caring about the possible improvements that you can bring to your House of Worship's media productions. then I'd say like perhaps try to push it, do it on your own. You can ask the help of this awesome community with implementing those, and then people will start to subconsciously perhaps get used to all these improvements, like higher resolution, more higher fidelity broadcasts, higher production value, and then see what happens when you take it away. Maybe
Yeah,
you'll get
exactly.
some.
No,
some,
that's
some people,
exactly it.
yeah,
Go ahead.
because people don't appreciate it until they experience it. Then when it's taken away, they're like, oh, what happened?
To Mickey's point, I've worked with a lot of various house of worships, whether it's synagogues or Christian or Buddhist or many other things, and I've done ones recently where I was working with someone and we just brought in Blackmagic cameras, and cut it and had close-ups and had one good camera operator, just one. That's all it took, is one good camera operator to follow people around, and they definitely were upset that they had spent 20 years not doing that. It was the missing of that, and they could never go back. Like as soon as they get that, as soon as someone has the experience of what that looks like, and so you pushing it forward, I completely agree with Mickey. And this is what I try to do all the time with all of my work, is how do I every show is better than the last show. Every show is evolving. Every show, I don't relax very much. I can see where it could go, and I'm constantly trying to close that gap. And I think in some ways you do it for the key is to move past doing it for the event and do it for your own benefit, that you're getting better, you're learning, this is a lab, this is where you can go with it. And then what you want to obviously then keep on doing is making sure that you're still checking in with, it's not just a technological process, but it really is, you keep on looking at what serves that audience, what makes it more visceral or something that's really interesting to them to watch. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So, well, first of all, I agree with everything that you say, but my real question is, how are you trying to push the envelope for how? Because are you talking about, and I'm assuming you're talking audio, since this is audio day, but also video. The one thing that I've had on some of the people that I've talked to about House of Worship is a little bit of pushback. And yeah, it's nice to actually build up, and people like that ultimate look and feel that's gradually improving, but some people don't like it. They don't like to see cameras in the at the pulpit. They don't want to see microphones all over the place. They want to walk into something and know that they're not going to be recorded at an event. And so there's a little bit of kind of, I don't want to say hiding it, because that's not the best way to do it as well, but making it so it improves the overall production, but it doesn't make people feel uncomfortable into going into church, because that can change the timbre of everything, how the church operates and stuff like that. So I would suggest being a little bit cautious in this and talking to the congregation about this and being very open. And they might even have some suggestions as to what you might do that you probably won't use, but you might think, okay, well, maybe we can do it this way and make it. So yeah, ultimately don't put a slider in front of the priest or whatever, but just be a little bit aware of what you're recording and the group of people that are going there to do one thing, and that is worship, and not get in their way with it.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Stream and keep the archives public. You're trying to find new disciples. I mean, whether you're a YouTuber or a church, you're trying to bring more people into the fold. So stream, archive, but there's no point in streaming or archiving if it doesn't sound good. So make sure your pastor sounds fantastic. And the real trick is getting the music to sound good, because I will, if I'm working in the studio, I will just put on services to listen to the music while I'm working throughout the day, and then check in with the sermon as it goes by. But that's you got to be streaming, you got to be archiving, and it has to sound so good that people would watch it recreationally and voluntarily, not just because the Lord is watching them.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I would just say that churches have such a wide spectrum of how they operate and what their resources are. One, I don't know what exactly you're dealing with, because there's, from a small satellite church to a church that holds thousands. Obviously, this is like a vastly different conversation. I would say that in my experience, some of these, it seems like most services really are putting on a production, right? And they want this to be a production. They want it to be a streamlined thing that looks really good, that feels really good, and keeps everybody really, really interested and captivated with everything, right? And so I think a big part of that, when you start talking about upgrades, people immediately think of the finances of that and how expensive things are. But in my experience, a lot of these smaller churches may actually be incredibly disorganized. And so there's a huge amount of streamlining you can do that costs nothing, that will make everything probably a lot better than it would be getting a new camera. So that would be my real advice, is look at what things, is there a better way to get people in and out of the room before and after? Or is there a giant section where everybody is all congregating and it just gets really hard to move through there, that things can be maybe spread out, whatever, any kind of facilitating thing, that these things really end up being a huge part of what makes stuff better in my experience, at least. So
Yeah, and if it's a large one, that's one thing. If you have a small congregation, I know that where I grew up, their congregation has gotten pretty small. There's like 5 to 10 people showing up for that one. It's in the middle of nowhere, and I look at that as an opportunity to innovate, because you just don't have a lot of people in the way. The problem with is, by having a smaller congregation, you can now focus more on the cameras and make sure that there, and look at your online audience and how you build that online audience and really focus it there. Some house of worships have moved to basically, like you would have 2 services, so a lot of really big churches will have 2, 3, 4 services in a day. And what some of the folks have done is now they have 2 physical services and 1 digital service, or 2, and the idea is that the digital service, there's nobody in it. They're really building it for the online audience. And and they may have, sometimes they have people in it because but those people are there and they know they're there because it's for the online audience to feel included in that process. So instead of trying to walk this line of being a little for the local and a little for the remote, they just make one of the services just generated for the remote. And that started off very small. And now, I know with one of the folks that I know, the remote is twice as big as the in-room. It's a much larger audience. And it was a pretty big in-room when it started. Much larger audience online than there is in person. But it does take time. It took a year to get there, of evolving to get to that point. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Just to add also, in these churches, you're part of like a vast community. Even if it's a smaller church, there's a lot of outreach here. So really, talk to other people, because you never know who else is there. Just a little bit of networking may bring vast resources that you weren't expecting, that can just happen in a really good way. So that's just my other advice, is talk with people. If you're trying to make this stuff happen from nothing, outreach is the first thing to do, is really just communicate with your community and see who can help.
If you've got questions, of course, you can go to Makana. If you don't know how to get to Makana, go to officehours.global/join, and you'll be able to fill something out. You'll start getting emails from us every day. That'll have links to Makana, links to Discord, and a lot more. So officehours.global/join. Let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
Next one comes from David Ripley in Newport Beach, California. What would be the recommended headset mic with 2 ear loops for wireless PA/house of worship use? Currently looking at the Countryman H6 or the DPA 4066 Core, which are both omnidirectional. The DPA is significantly more expensive. Is it that much better?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would say, generally speaking, the DPAs tend to have much richer mid-low, which gives you a more fuller sound. And how important this is to you and the specific people that will be using the mic would vary. I'd say the H6 is certainly a good sounding mic, despite the DPA having a richer sound. So I'd probably go around and test them. My go-to in terms of DPA would be the 4066, and but if you have clients or production that want something a bit more discreet, you probably want to take a look at the 6066. It's just a much smaller capsule at the end there, but in terms of audio fidelity, they're certainly at par with each other.
Good, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, the Countryman was always kind of one of the leading headset mics, and they make a fantastic product. But like nothing, in my experience, nothing is beating the DPA stuff. It is so good, and a 4066. I have to say, I mean that I've used that mic on everything from vocal as lavs to acoustic guitars to toms on drums, and they never fail. They always capture the source really brilliantly, and they're also really low profile. So they're really easy to hide. They're easy to just get into small spots. But they're just, yeah, it is that much better in my opinion.
Good, Bill.
And sometimes you don't know what you're getting when you spend a little more. I had a weird thing happen. I just got my AirPod Pro 2s, and I was out on a walk. I was listening to an audio book. One of my neighbors came up with his dog as I was walking my dog. And so I took out the earphone, but I was also on the same hand with the leash, and Charlie tugged for a minute. It fell to the ground, and wouldn't you know it, it literally rolled under the foot of the person I was talking about, and he stepped directly on it. And I was going, oh, no, I've only had them for a week, and now I've lost one. How am I going to? I was going through all this. I picked it up and brushed it off, put it back in my ear, and darned if it didn't work perfectly. Sometimes it is that subtle build quality stuff behind the scenes you can't overtly see, which is the reason it wasn't a $90 set of headphones. It's a $250. Sometimes they actually do put that into research and development to make a stronger, more robust product. And I think we've all been there where you know, oh gosh, I wish I had bought the upgraded one because it would have lasted 10 years instead of 2 years, and I wouldn't have had to buy 3 of them.
And I think the build quality on both the DPA and the Countryman are very, very high. I do agree. This is 4066. So this is what I use when I'm not using this mic. If I'm in a meeting where I don't want a big mic here, I have this in my mixer and I swap over to it. I have a lot of Countrymans as well. I do agree that the bass, the mid to bass response on the DPA is better than the Countryman, and also the Countryman tends to have a little more sibilance than the DPA does, in my experience. And so those are the 2 reasons that I kind of tend to lean that direction. Next question.
Robert Linkram in Belmont Shores, California. Are Hollyland 4K wireless video transmitters and receivers good for pro use? These are under $1,000 United States dollars.
Go ahead, Jesse.
If you want the real deal, Mr. Professional, you want to get the Teradeks, but Hollylands are absolutely functional for getting a signal from a camera, from a switcher or something like that, into a remote monitor. It's not instantaneous. There is a tiny bit of delay, but not so much delay that it would disrupt a normal average shoot.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd say the Hollylands are certainly at the budget side of things. If this is for a production that is like recorded, like a sit-down interview that is not live or a film shoot, you can certainly get away with it and deal with the RF issues that arise from using a system that operates at 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. But if you are doing something live, I certainly wouldn't go anywhere under 5,000 US for a wireless video system. Just taking a look at it, I'm assuming it's the Pyro S that Robert is talking about. Looking at their list of features here, them saying it operates at 2.4 or 5 gigahertz is certainly not a feature in my opinion. And also the same goes with auto frequency hopping. When you're dealing with RF, you want to be able to lock down and control your RF environment, and having something that's just hopping around randomly is something you do not want there. You want absolute control of the frequencies that your systems are using. So yeah, I would probably, for something that's live, I probably look at the Teradek Ranger on the lower end of things, and something along the lines of Vislink for the higher end of things for something that's live. But if it's just something like you're on set shooting a film or doing a sit-down interview, you'd probably have enough time to work through things, work through the issues that arise. But if this is live, no go.
Yeah, I think that it depends on how far you're throwing. You know, if you need something that's going 20 or 30 feet, I think, and you're okay with a couple extra frames of latency, I think that the Hollyland, I mean, I've seen them used in projects. I've never used the Hollylands in production. I'm pretty much a Teradek person for the most part. We use Vislink at NAB. Right now, I'm testing the Teradek Rangers, and I think that they don't have some of the features that Vislink has as far as control and everything else. But I found that their response is I mean, the distance that I can go, what I can go through, is pretty close to the Vislinks. They're not as tunable as the Vislink. The Vislink has an enormous amount of control. So if you're in a contested environment, we were working with the Vislink engineers, and the amount that they could tune the antennas and figure those things out to work through things is kind of amazing. But it's $100,000. Like, it's $100,000 for both, for the one we were using anyways, for the set, so $50,000 each, I think. And then the Rangers that I'm testing, I think right now, are $15,000, and they are much smaller, much easier to use, not as many features, but the range is incredible. I think so they're really, really good there. Again, the Hollylands are more cost effective, and again, I would say that if you're not doing long throws and you need to be freed from wireless, we've done tons of stuff where we've got a Steadicam in a single room that's 50 by 60. We'll put a receiver in the middle of that room. Nothing's throwing more than 20 or 30 feet, and we can use almost anything. That's going to work, inside of that environment. But if we're controlling it, it's not a contested environment. So in that kind of environment, if you're using it like that, or using it outdoors, or using it somewhere where you just don't want cables, I think the Hollyland could be a one. There is more delay. I think it's a couple more frames of delay that you have there, and that becomes the reason that's important. And we would keep on saying there's more latency. It's because it screws up your mics. So if they have a close up, the wired cameras are now coming in ahead of the wireless camera. So every frame of delay in that camera becomes a real problem, because now your audio sync is off, and you have to decide. And usually we either sync to the wireless camera, because a person watching the video is less sensitive to the video being ahead of the audio, because we see that every day. Light gets to us faster than audio. So we will either sync to the wireless, or we'll split the difference, and get halfway in between them. I prefer to sync to the wireless and let it be ahead, but we oftentimes, if it's like 2 or 3 frames, we're going to split the difference, because that's too much to go down that path. So, but if it's like a frame or 2, we will just go to the wireless, or again, split the difference so that you get that. But that's why we get concerned about it. If you're only using one camera that's wireless, it matters less. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just going back to the latency there. A lot of the more professional systems have a separate Genlock carrier at usually a lower frequency band, that allows even the wireless remote camera to be Genlocked, and that's important in terms of lowering that latency. And also that auto frequency hopping that it does means the receiver has to keep a buffer within itself of a couple of frames or a couple milliseconds, so that it gives time for the transmitter and the receiver to hop between different frequencies. And the same is true with affordable, like 2.4 gigahertz wireless microphone systems. That auto hopping thing adds a significant amount of latency.
Eduardo Augustine said, I use the Teradek Spark 4K for testing, but not a good idea if you have different mediums. If you are using a wireless transmitter, I would connect them all to the same path. Robert Linkram says, he said that Jack Cannon said, if your budget is limited, they do the job, but they're not seamless. Robert said that the wireless path is about 50 feet with some potential live human bodies in the path. Audio from the wireless video is would not be in play. The other thing to remember is that the transmitters are going through things or not going through things. So with all transmitters, get them over everybody's head. So get them up above everything else that's happening if you can. So that higher that transmitter, because it does matter that if you can see the transmitter from the receiver, or see the receiver from the transmitter, your chances of a good signal is much higher than anything else if it's getting low and near people that might be blocking it. Big water bags tend to stop wireless effectively. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Robert mentioned that the audio from the RF will not be in play, but any visual that you capture that has to maintain lip sync will be off from your other wired cameras. with the because that video will be more latent compared to your standard wired cameras. And going to back to wired cameras, do you really need wireless? I'm someone who makes money from renting out wireless systems, but I push clients off to using cable solutions, even though I'd lose a possible rental there, because cable works. There's no if I were to have to choose between wireless and cable, I'll always go cable whenever possible, and also definitely avoid affordable or cheap wireless systems.
And also I'll use cable to cut the distance. If I know that the camera, if there's a stage here and the camera is wireless here, I won't put the wireless back here. I'll put it right there. Like if it's, like I'll move it up to the stage and I'll have wired close the distance between those two. I want to reduce the number of variables every single time to make that more effective. A reminder that we have evening shows. Extra Hours is on Mondays at 6 p.m. and the Rundown is tomorrow at 6 p.m. You can still find them on YouTube. We put out announcements in the emails, so check those out. They're great new shows. Extra Hours is a little bit more casual version of this, and David Paskin hosts the Rundown. Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles is up next. What brand of NPF batteries do you recommend?
I go Jeffrey.
So I'm a big Sony fan, and with NPF, I've always used the Sony batteries, of course, with my Sony cameras, staying within the brand. Same thing with Canon. Well, Canon doesn't do too many NPF, but I've also haven't bought a battery in a while, and this year at CES, I'm trying something different for my rig because I'm using the OBSBot Talent, and I've been working with these newer. Well, this is a newer, but the newer batteries that are 10,000 milliamps, because they have special, different ways to charge, different ways to disperse your charge. Like, for instance, this one has a dual USB option to it, so I could actually charge my phone if I wanted to, or if I needed to, or another device. Not that you should while you're actually doing the production, but it is something that's to look at. So I've been playing with those. But if you want tried and true, then I would go with Sony, and I would go with Watson. They make some great NPF batteries.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, just like Jeffrey, I'm a big fan of the Sony batteries, but it seems like I was trying to find it earlier, but it seems like they've discontinued manufacturing them. You could probably still find them online just because they've been a form factor or a mount that has been in use for so long. You can still probably find Sony batteries, NPF batteries available somewhere. But saying that, my go-to now are the batteries from Hawkwoods. They are by far the best performing NPF style batteries that I've used. I have ones that I bought, I think, in 2016 or 2015 that are still in my cycle, still working well and still holding a really good charge. I know, aside from Hawkwoods, I know people have been happy with the NPF batteries from Anton Bauer, although I haven't tried them myself. And agreeing with Jeffrey, the Watson ones on the more budget side of things have been performing relatively well as well.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, it wasn't interesting. I didn't realize that all my friends here have been switching the same way I did about 5 or 6 years ago, away from the slab NP1 style batteries and towards those Sony 960 style. A lot of companies make them. I just think that the technology of battery creation has gone so far that those old slab style, they kind of feel like lead acid. I don't know if they're actually that. I think there were some other battery chemistries in those long form factors, but it seems harder and harder to find sources and dependable sources for those NP style batteries. The same way for me, Anton Bauer and those other big gold mount things, it's just, I see more of them in the people selling off their gear than I do in people promoting them for long-range things. It was great battery technology, but I just think the industry has kind of moved on now, and so things are getting smaller and more dense and more recyclable in terms of energy, and so I look to the future, not the past. That's me. I for my Sound Devices stuff, for my Scorpio and other things, I need these MPF batteries, and I have to say that I don't know if these are the best batteries in the world, but they're the most convenient ones, and that's the small rig ones. And I think Jack Cannon mentioned them as well. He said small rig's been making some interesting ones, and
and Eduardo mentioned that they work as power banks. I've got a couple of these now. And so the big thing is that, yes, they have a USB-C on the end. So I don't have to take a charger with them. And the charger that I have with all my other gear just plugs into this thing and charges it up. So I've been increasing the number of these. It's always been this thing like, where do I take the charger? When am I charging these things? And being able to just be in my hotel room and just connect these to what I'm already charging with and then they also have a little, they have a little readout in the front that tells me how much is left on the battery. And so these are, I think they were on sale. That's why I bought this one. They were on sale at B&H. I don't know if they still are, but they've been working great for me. I've got a couple of them now, and they're doing well. I don't know if they have the same capacity, but as far as convenience when I'm moving around, and I'm not doing as much heavy lifting as Mickey does, so I think I'm more of a casual MPF. I'm a more casual MPF user, and for casual MPF usage, I think these are working pretty well. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas, up next. Last day to get an Insta360 Pro 2 at bargain price of $4,500 US. But what would you do?
It's got to be
with
$450. I don't think Insta360 makes anything for $4,500. I think
hey, decimal place warning.
Oh no! I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It is they're doing the Insta360 Pro. This is
a rig.
This is their spherical camera. So here's the. So this is the spherical camera, and they've been making this for a while. What I will say is that 8K all the way around, not that high res. Like, just in case you're wondering, you take 8K and you put it right in front of you. It's a lot of pixels. You stretch it all the way around you. It's not a lot of pixels. I have used this camera. It's fine. It works fine. It's relatively easy to run. We've used one. I think they have a higher end one as well. And so we've used those, and there's nothing wrong with them. I will say that we've all kind of moved away, at least currently, from 360. So that's probably why it's on sale. And the reason we moved away from 360 is because if you look at this, the problem with these is that it has to stitch between these. It's got lenses all the way around, and it has to create a stitch in between them where they're overlapping. And that has turned out to be, relatively time consuming, and you definitely can't do it live. And it's time consuming and doesn't always work. Things kind of fade in and fade out at those stitch points. It's very rare that it's perfectly aligned without an incredible amount of work. And then the other issue that you get into is low light, high motion, odd sunlight and lighting and everything else. You'll definitely see where those seams are. And so that's been the thing that's really kind of jammed up our gears. I've used this. Obviously, I used to own 6 Ozos, which were the kind of the higher end, live version of that. And so I've done a lot of this work, and the stitching is really the thing that gets you in the way. So a lot of us have moved to 180 degrees, and that's what you're seeing Apple do, a lot of other folks. And the reason that 180 makes sense is because there's no stitching. you have two 180 degree lenses, and this is what NextVR did years ago, and Apple bought NextVR. So NextVR said, we're just going to go to dual 180, stereo 180. So stereo is more important. High frame rate is more important. When we start stitching these, we can't doing this at 90 frames a second is really cost prohibitive. These are able to do when you're doing them side by side, you can get up to 90 frames a second, 120 frames a second. All of those things become possible again. And so we thought that NextVR was wimps. We were like, they're only doing 180. We do 360, but most of us have leaned into the 180 realm because it's just the production is much more efficient. There may be someday we go back to 360, but I think that era is going to be over for a little while, and that's probably why they're putting these on sale. Go ahead, Jesse.
There's also the issue that at 360 you've got nowhere to hide the crew anymore. Like usually half of the room is stuff nobody wants to see. It's a constant issue.
You're 100% right. It is. When we did these, you had to think about everything all the way around, and when we do live events, people in the front row of a concert, turns out sometimes they're doing a lot of stuff in the front row of the concert that they don't necessarily want streamed to the rest of the world. And we've seen a couple of those where we put the camera somewhere and everyone looks at it for a little while and then they forget about it because they've had too much to drink, and then they start doing stuff that isn't appropriate for their employment. And we were really glad that this was a test stream because so anyway, so I think that you're 100% right, trying to hide the sets, trying to do those things. And then the other thing is that people get into this, like, I have to show you something and force you to look all over the place so that it's 360. One of the things that you want to think about with 180 is, if you think about the 180 degree, what you really want, there's about 120 degrees in here, 90 to 120 degrees in here. This is where you want all your action to happen. This creates ambience so that you feel like you're there. The mistake people make is they put subjects over here. Apple does this. Apple just did this with their concert. It drives me crazy because it creates black over here, and you see it. Every time you see the black, you are being pulled out of the experience. So you don't want to force anybody to look past about 120 degrees, because you want their field of view to not see that black ever. Like, you don't want them to look over there. Next question.
Alton Christensen's up next from New York, New York. Need audio troubleshooting help. I have a Blackmagic Design Subtle HD to Zoom via UltraStudio 3G. There is a signal pathway. HDMI is going into USB-C. The video's okay, but no audio. MacOS Sonoma is his operating system. He tried MIDI settings. Solutions?
Mickey?
Yeah, I'd probably go through the typical troubleshooting step and follow the signal flow. See where that audio disappears. So I'd probably take the HDMI out of your BMD Shuttle and feed it to like a broadcast monitor or something with a headphone out or speakers, or even like a consumer TV, and see if you can hear it coming out of there. If it doesn't, then I'd probably look at the encoding that you're doing on the media that you're playing back. Make sure that it is I would go with a DNX HD MXF file, or you can also do a ProRes QuickTime file. You want to make sure that the audio is encoded in PCM. That usually works out the best, as opposed to going with something that's compressed like ASC. Just go with straight out PCM. If you are getting audio directly out of the shuttle, then I would look into your settings on the look at the UltraStudio recorder. And probably open up BMD Media Express, which comes with the software. See if in that software you are getting signal, you're seeing the meters bounce. And if not, look at your desktop video setup settings. But follow the signal flow. That's usually a good troubleshooting technique. See where that audio disappears.
Yeah, and definitely look at what your how the audio is being packed as it arrives. So that's if you're doing it with the shuttle, you might want to take that file and take a look at it. Make sure that it's not a multi-channel track. It's individual tracks in the file that you're using, because there's a chance that you could get into a state there that one can't see the other. Next question.
Ben Bedward in New Glarus, Wisconsin. I have been asked to record a small high school jazz band. Would you have suggestions on how to set up the Rode M5 mics for best sound on the recording?
Go ahead, Chris.
All right. So if it was me, I would say, awesome, I only need 14 more microphones. So is my real answer. There's a ton of different approaches here, right? And they're all really fun. So it just depends on the way that you want to really, really approach the situation and really understand the kind of result you're trying to get. If you pull up a jazz record, I don't know where this band is recording in the high school. If it's the gym, that's probably pretty rough. So I would try and find the best room acoustically. Hopefully there's like a little concert hall room that, a performance space that's maybe a little bit more ambiently centric. But you can approach this with your two microphones and understand that if you do it that way, you're doing a field recording. Okay, you're a taper at a concert, essentially. And that's the kind of outcome that you're going to get, is you would be a taper with two really inexpensive microphones. So that's fine if that's what you're trying to do, and that's great. If you're looking for something that's actually like a mic'd thing, you're going to need more microphones. So, I mean, if you have those two microphones, those could be overheads on your drum kit. Or they could be room mics, but that's all that they would be. And you would have to, kick needs its own mic, snare, the toms, you can, in jazz, you can absolutely do a less is more type of thing. And you could do like a kick, a snare, and some overheads, or just kick and overheads if you're real sparse on channel counts or on microphones, whatever. But you're gonna need close mics. Bass is gonna need its own mic. Drums, you're gonna need a few microphones. You're gonna maybe want a couple ambient microphones. If the room is really, really live, the ambient mics are the first ones I would lose. If it meant, having something proper on a close mic, because as soon as this information gets compressed, all the room is just going to pop out more and more as it gets processed. So hope that helps.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. Ronnie Ben doesn't mention exactly how many of these M5 microphones he has, but I'll go with the same assumption that Chris went with, that it's 2 microphones. I would start off that with recording it big band style, wherein they're doing things live. Everyone's playing all at the same time, and position the band on stage or in the space with how they would typically be presented on stage, and then put the band put the microphones in either an XY stereo miking pattern or an AB, depending on what sounds best to you, and then have the band mix themselves with their performance. That's how I would balance things out, and this would give you a recording, a one take recording for the entire band that gives you a sense of space, in whatever space it would be. A gym, again, could sound rough, but that's the space that they're in. If you can find a better space, that would be better, of course. But after that initial recording, if you want to have a bit more control in mixing, you can take that big band style recording and then use that as a guide for overdubs. That way you can utilize the limited number of microphones you have in miking different instruments more fully isolated. It's still limited to the number of tracks or number of mics you have, but you can sort of balance things out in the mix if that's the product that you want to, the mix that you want to come out with.
I'm starting to experiment with Moises of ripping things apart later that weren't recorded by individual mics and then rebalancing them, not remixing them, but rebalancing them. It's not working yet, in case you're wondering. But there's some aliasing that goes on when you do that. But I have a feeling we're going to get there. It's one of those things that you can go, well, it's kind of like early mid journey. You're kind of like, not quite there yet, but it's getting there. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsoy is coming to us now from Tromsø, Norway. I hope to have some spare time to just listen to music this Christmas. I have a set of Sennheiser 660i headphones and a cozy lounge chair. He's looking for a player, a digital to analog converter, and a headphone amp that will give him the deserved experience. Budget, he wants to do it in 2 budgets, just okay, and over the top price range. Well, warning.
We've got the people who can take you over the top here. So go ahead, Chris.
So I can start with, I have 2 of the most over the top things that you can get that in my mind, they're the only things that I use. So one is, this is probably the most ludicrous thing that you could buy for what you're talking about, as it's probably about $4,500. But that's the Grace M905. And so this is this is a monitor controller that is full featured and has a ton of things you would never need it for. They make a standalone headphone amp that is the same one that is built in here, which I use daily, and it is just my favorite thing. It's really, really excellent. And the other option that I use is me and all of my clients really are Rupert Neve headphone amps. And these are also just exquisite pieces of equipment. No matter what, you're never going to need something else. It's just always going to work, and it's always going to do a great job. This is really nice because it has a bunch of different options. So you can do XLR inputs, you can do RCA, and then you can do just like an 1/8" mini plug, the 3.5 millimeter option. So I'm a huge fan of those proponents. I'll say with headphone amps, I mean, there's a massive scale here with all of this stuff, with converters, with all these things. And it's important to really understand that your components they really matter. You get what you pay for. And as soon as you start dropping down, these pieces of equipment, they just can't actually do the job that this stuff is doing, because it just doesn't have the load bearing capacity. So.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd probably go for something that's sort of middle of the road. I'd probably go for the Army ADI2 DAC. There's also a ADI2 Pro, which not only has digital to analog conversion, but it also has A to D conversion with preamps built in. You get of course, the build quality and reliability of RME. They're very, very low jitter, high accuracy converters, as well as I'd say professional grade headphone amplifiers built into them.
And a quick reminder: if you want to help out Office Hours, if you enjoy the show and you'd like to pitch in a little bit, the easiest way to do it is like and subscribe our channel so that more people know that we're here. But you can also, if we're a nonprofit, you can donate. Go to officehours.global/donate. And if you feel like really putting a hand into it, you can and helping us out, you can go to officehours.global/volunteer. Let's go to the last question.
Last question. Comax, British Columbia, what are some suggestions for going live while driving, not using a mobile phone, and cognizant of distracted driving implications? Thanks.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Super quick. The smaller, the better the camera. Less cable, and of course, cable management's very important. Do not put a camera on your purview, so you don't want to have it like right here. In some areas and states, they will pull you over if they see a screen or a camera like that. So keep that in mind. And the more cameras that they see in your car, then the more they're going to get concerned and pull you over for that.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I don't like to be the scold, but if you're driving, you're not streaming. If you're streaming, you're not driving. You can do it from another seat, but this is a preposterous idea, and I think I'm a little bit more conservative than the average member of this panel, perhaps, but knock it off.
I just want to I streamed when I stream, it is with a cell phone, and it is a suction cup to the windshield wiper. I don't do it in the United States, oddly enough. The only place I did it was Rwanda, and when Meerkat had just come out, this was probably 2015 or 2016. I just stuck it there. Now, the one thing I have to say is that driving in Kigali, Rwanda, the car is moving like 4 miles an hour. Like you're just in traffic, and so it's not quite the same as driving down the highway with it. But I had it there, and when we got stoplights, I would look over and answer questions, live about Rwanda and so on and so forth. Before South by Southwest, I think it was one of the top 10 streamers on Meerkat because people were like, I'm seeing Africa, like let's go watch that, and I had hundreds of people watching, and so it was a lot of fun. But I do agree with the other things that usually I would stream with somebody else there that's managing the stream. Again, I think we talked about this the other day. I tend to put the camera. If I'm going to use a camera, I'm not going to. If I'm really serious about this, I'm not going to use the phone. And what we do is either a micro or mostly a GoPro on the other side of the rear view mirror because you can't see it. And then you run the wires up and around and down the side, and then you can put ones on the sides. And so, but it's totally blind to you once it goes on. I used to have a mount there on one of my cars that you could just attach something to it, and I wouldn't see it. And then you can turn it on. Just turn it on before you start driving, and then it's streaming, and you're not thinking about it. And if something goes wrong, pull over and fix it. Like don't and then turn it back on again. But if it's not something you have to manage on a momentary basis, I think you'll be okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the great questions, as always. Our producers, you watching, never disappoint. We had a lot of great questions. If your questions went back, if we didn't get to your question today, it went back to your notes. So it went back to, it's in your notes inside of Makana. You can bring them back tomorrow. So definitely bring those questions back. Thank you so much for asking so many great questions. And thanks to the panel. We can't do this without you. It was a great panel. I love Wednesdays with all of our audio experts and answering these audio questions. We really appreciate it. It really makes a huge difference to have you here. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this happen. You'll see all kinds of things happening. You may notice that our image is a little bit, it's sometimes too bright, sometimes too dark, a little bit tearing. We're experimenting with things that no one's ever done before right now for the rest of the year. And so we're working with engineering teams related to this that are helping us, make this better. And we're making it better, we think, for everyone being the the first one out. So anyway, so you're going to see it go up and down. I just want to thank the tech team for all the hard work they're doing in that area, and the tech teams that help manage all aspects, prepping us, managing the content, managing the questions, managing all of those things. It's a small village that makes this possible. Now, if we'd done this by the Tlaloc traversal, so if we had done this and we had gone to each person that asked questions, person by person, we would have traveled 22,000 miles, 35,000 kilometers, and that is 174 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Now I need an Orbit and a 98-inch screen in my studio.
I do not need that. I don't. I saw it. I thought it was incredible, but I would not do it.
Hey, Alex, I just looked online. They have crash test dummy T-shirts. Should we all wear them for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, exactly. The crash test. It's the crash test dummy. What was funny was that yesterday it was nuclear, like it was so bright, and then I looked later. I looked later that day, and it was really dark, and I was like, okay. So I pinged somebody, and they were like, oh, we're figuring it out. So anyway,
hey, I have one more question for you. I had somebody just sent me a script for potentially doing it, and I really like the script, but I keep getting this nagging feeling. Was this written in part by AI? Do you know any tools that'll test for human construction versus AI construction?
There are some, and I don't know what they are, but I know that there's some tools out there that you can throw them in, and they will say this was written by AI.